Уважаемые коллеги, пожалуйста, занимайте места в зале. Мы начинаем через 2 минуты нашу сессию.
Ее убили.
Соседу. Да, конечно. деньки, говорю. Все люди, вот идешь сюда, люди сидят, пиво, пиво.
Согнать. Или да, это еще лучше.
Процесс. Я завидую.
Болели это, да, болели.
Мы перекрыли пешком на работу, пешком сюда.
Да.
Ездить невозможно, и, соответственно, получаешь такая энергетика.
Уважаемые коллеги,
Distinguished colleagues, good afternoon. Let me welcome everybody who has gathered here at the roundtable discussion devoted to enhanced financial literacy. As you well know, the strategy of financial literacy was adopted by the government of the Russian Federation last year, and now much work is being done in this connection, preparatory stage for its implementation. Today we would like to have an exchange of opinions. We have invited representatives from pivotal agencies and regulators in charge of the strategy implementation, and also representatives from the regions that are truly proactive in terms of promoting financial literacy, and also representatives from the banks, commercial organizations, representatives of the public, and also higher educational institutions. Well, so we have quite a good quorum just to discuss these issues and make a step forward. To start with, I would like to introduce our panelists. So today, this session will be opened by Sergei Starchak, Deputy Minister of Finance of the Russian Federation. Let's have a round of applause. Sergei Anatolievich supervises the implementation of the projects of the financial literacy project and also national strategy of financing in the Russian Federation. Among the panelists, at least for the first part, so our round table is quite big. So we have tried to collect representatives of different agencies and regions. We have Alexei Kivanovsky, the advisor of the chairman of the central bank, Alexander Feniyov from Tomskaya Oblast, Vladimir Pritupov, deputy chairperson of the government of the Altai Krai, minister of the finance of the Altai Krai, Andrei Shepetov, vice president, the director of the department, and director of the Department of Education of the Ministry of Education. And we also decided to invite the representative from the financial agency, and all these people will speak about the financial literacy improvement, and there will be a Minister of Finance of the Stavropolsky Klet, Larisa Kalinchenko. She will also be a part of this discussion. Now we are kind of operators operating regimen-minded. I would like to give the floor to the Deputy Minister of the Finance of the Russian Federation, Sergei Starchak, and he will have a keynote speech. So, good afternoon, distinguished colleagues. Thank you for your willingness to attend this session. So this meeting takes place within the framework of the Moscow Financial Forum. We did not even claim that this kind of an auspicious event would also include financial literacy issues. But we're pretty sure this is going to be pretty useful, well, for many people, and we have colleagues from different regions of Russia, and would like to discuss all these aspects and to find out where we are now. Of course, financial literacy plays a very important role, and the forum organizers have given a green light to conduct this panel roundtable discussion devoted to financial literacy. At least we have a program for this covering the period up to 2023. So we have a systems conceptual document, systemic conceptual document. So this is a draft document of financial literacy. We were actually piloting all these approaches, and we tried to feel the ground in what directions we should forward. This strategy actually strengthened whatever has been done before, and it also recommends how to interact with banking institutions, or rather with other, bodies, legislative and executive bodies of the Russian Federation. So here in this auditorium, we have, colleagues and peers who would certainly support all these ideas related to financial literacy. That's why I'm not going to convince you or persuade you that it is really necessary. In any case, it forms or creates a platform. Platform has become a kind of very fashionable word or concept. Whatever we're talking about, this strategy is aimed at developing really reasonable financial behavior of citizens, and this is really necessary in order to improve the quality of life of our compatriots. And at the same time, it is really indispensable to increase the stability of the financial market, because irresponsible behavior disregarding financial risks, sometimes it ends up in very poor outcomes, and even sad outcomes, because we did not pay proper attention to the development of events, let's say hard currency loans or hard currency mortgages. This is not just a favor, it is also associated with higher risks, and the tragedy might take place in the middle of nowhere. Because at stake is the responsibility of a physical person, because they might be lured by low interest rates and many other things. And at the same time, the government authorities they also did not pay proper attention to this. They didn't teach, they didn't train the people how to behave. The strategy is aimed at population at large, and we tried to develop such a document that would take into account the interests of our younger generations, let's say our school children, our students. Special attention to be paid to this strategy, and we shall also try to embrace the pensioners when it comes to the financial literacy, because when approaching the pension reform and the voices related to the financial educations, they were not that kind of compromising. But anyway, the farther we go, the closer we approach the finalization of the new retirement pension and the improved financial education. Financial literacy is of utmost importance. And then now, we really believe that in the course of our general discussion, so this issue would be also addressed by our colleagues in the field, I mean in different territories, I mean hands-on experience when dealing with all these issues. So the first stage of our strategy coincides with the completion of the final stage of the project of the Ministry of Finance being implemented in cooperation with the World Bank. So this project has been rated high at the World Bank level, and we are being quoted and referred to in many documents. So this is a G20 group regarding financial inclusiveness and financial education. So, and this provides quite a lot of room for optimism in order to provide for a high level of implementation of this of the strategy per se. And so we do believe that it's a very important trend for systemic development of the financial education in the Russian Federation. We do believe that the accumulated experience would be really used with due regard for best practices. And just recently, there was an international symposium in Russia devoted to the enhanced financial literacy, which, actually, we're just planning this symposium in October within the framework of the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. So I think that in connection with this event, so there will be a further development of the financial expert potential in terms of financial literacy of the population, and probably there will be some new things being brought up, because there will be quite a wide circle of experts. And within the framework with OECD, we have launched a project on financial education within the framework of the Community of Independent States. Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan are participating countries. And we can see that they really display vivid interest to all these issues. They are also active participants of this kind of work, and they demonstrate interest not only in the work of the Federal Center, but also to those achievements that have been become possible in the elsewhere in the regions. So now also thinking over the parity financing, we are really happy that the program implementation is goes on in the partnership format. Because there are representatives of the regional financial authorities, and we know for sure that in many places, so the actual development of events is much better than specified in the project. We think that important in the first place to make it happen, let's say the local strategic documents or planning documents related to financial education, so would be used in real life, and these items should be properly specified, and the plans developed in agreement with the federal development plans. So some people can have already achieved certain results, and they can proudly say that these regions happen to be kind of hubs or of, let's say, advanced experience, and they would be willing to share this experience and the lessons learned with other regions. By way of example, for instance, in Kyrgyzstan, they started to analyze the experience gained by the municipal centers and federal center of the financial education of the Tomskaya Oblast. It's good news to us here in Moscow when we receive this sort of information. As to the Ministry of Finance, we have already signed 40 agreements with regional governments. regarding future cooperation. These are pretty serious documents. They also ascertain the liabilities of the participating entities. And actually, all these activities are aimed at sharing knowledge, and not only knowledge, but also some concrete materials. So within the framework of the Ministry of Finance project, we developed and implemented about 40 curricula. So they are aimed at the school children and start from school age and end with our pensioners. So we have the regional Federal Center of Financial Literacy. There is also a portal or gateway on financial literacy, and in the course of our roundtable discussion, so they will share statistics regarding the let's say the activity of this gateway. So we also have technical centers and methodology centers on the issue. We have trained more than 30,000 specialists and professionals. So we have also distributed many tons of information materials with clear-cut information for the consumers of the financial services and also the fundamentals of the financial education. So Rospotrebnadzor institutional basis has been also improved as one of the partners of the Ministry of Finance. About 2,000 staff members of this structure, they have gone through the advanced training in these topics, subject matters. And Rospotrebnadzor has a 24-hour toll-free line regarding the protection of the consumer rights when it comes to the financial services. So this list is infinite. I can continue to voice these achievements. I hope I have not been too kind of impulsive, but and you're not. Please bear with me. So because this topic actually enjoys its own development, but nevertheless, since I'm in charge of these issues, so I'm doing this with full degree of responsibility, and I am happy to do it. So I didn't know how it happened, but there was a major event conducted in the field of education, and financial literacy was one of the topics under discussion. So changing the tools, let's say, on the way or on a midway, if I may say so. So this will enable us to make further progress. So we have trained our trainers or tutors for different levels of education, especially for staff members of different organizations that are trying to be helpful in this area. We conduct 2 weeks of financial literacy, one for children, another one for adults. And the scale, the scope of this work is really impressive. 2,500,000 participants took part in these activities. This is really a big figure and a hell of a lot of work done in this connection. And of course, and because some people, of course, they couldn't come over to Moscow to attend this forum, but still they will be happy to know more about the achievements of it. So this information makes it possible to enjoy strategic thinking. And those colleagues who are dealing with the financial education, so they will have enough food for thought for the future, how to proceed. Because the strain in the international financial relations, it will increase, and this will have certain repercussions on the financial situation and financial markets inside the Russian Federation, and let's say literate Russians, I mean in terms of financial literacy, being young, fairly young, so they would be really well armed when challenged by different financial difficulties in their future lives. So I can't but say about it. One should be well aware that we're creating our own financial system, and presumably we should do it real quick. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Storchak. As I understand, you'll be leaving us a bit earlier than the end of the session. So without waiting for the debate, I'd like to ask everybody, is there any question in the audience? You may put it right now. While the audience is thinking, please, yeah, please introduce yourself. Timur Aitov. One question. How do you think, Mr. Storchak, is the current financing is adequate for all the processes, projects, and for financial education? Yeah, in order to teach someone do something, you need to send a person to second him or her to some training program. First, you spend $50 and then take it by million times, and it will be a lot higher than the number that being spent on financial literacy. But just let's take a look how many people visit the website. This educational website. We may discuss it here, the forum, but the people who live in their villages and elsewhere, will they be able to hear you? What sort of the effectiveness of all this huge effort? Well, I believe that in the process of regional presentations, the regions will show us this clear picture, whether this financing is adequate or not. And the framework of the project that was implemented initially, and when we used the World Bank's funding and the federal budget with the regional co-finance, I've never heard that anyone complained of inadequate funding, in particular with regard to the activities completed on sites and at administrative centers. Well, my colleagues will not let me lie, so to say. Yeah, they probably know even better, including the moderator, whether there are applications for more funding. Thank you. Well, my colleagues are writing to me right now about the number of visits of the website. Timur, you are not right. The visits to the portal, web portal, well, the visits to the portal over the last week of financial literacy, 1,100,000 there were who visited our website. Indeed, in weekdays it's lower, but when there is an educational campaign, up to 1 million visits we observe. We'll try to improve this performance. But as for funding, well, people, Mr. Storchak, how will it continue? Will it go on further? Now, when the projects are underway, well, my colleagues from the regions will add something to that. Clearly, you may always wish more funding, but we are working with financial literacy. So you should be the more efficient and accountable in spending, budgetary spending. Currently, all the funds that have been accumulated for the project are being used, not being used efficiently without the expected outcomes reached. And the regions have said, apart from the 9 pilot ones, they would like 60 regions have applied for free manuals. And this year, before the end of the year, 8 million manuals will be sent to the regions. The Ministry of Education would confirm that this circulation is not ordinary for them as well. Yeah, we'll have the circulation this year issued. You've been waiting for 1 year. Well, I also have a question. The central bank is going to speak now. Yeah. We do know that we have high volatility, currency volatility. In my sense, community behavior, the current community behavior, cannot be compared with what we had 2 decades ago. Yeah. may I ask you, is there any linkage? Well, no one is running to the dollar anymore as before. Is there any connection between our project, your project on financial education, the accumulated experience by now by people, and compared with the last 2 or 3 weeks? Fine. Mikhail, please, just a brief question, and then we'll go over to the next speaker. Hopefully, Guzel will answer also this question sociologically. I'm from Tomsk region. Mr. Tovchak, you mentioned the national strategy that was adopted 1 year ago. Should we expect a roadmap for this strategy implementation? And when? Well, the action plan, the roadmap, whatever, as you like, has been shaped. It's fairly extensive. We have not published it yet. We confirmed the roadmap, but not agreed with all the interested agencies fairly recently. We'll put it up on the website. Yeah. We have added approvals in the government with the co-chair or our board. Yeah, the interagency board co-chaired. The co-chairs agreed, despite their tight schedule, and the head of the central bank and the Ministry of Finance also have agreed, but it took some time for extra approvals. We had to agree with them that they will spearhead our plan implementation, to agree all the positions. Well, due to the post-election changes after the division of the ministries to get to education and social services, we are now updating the roadmap, and in the near future we'll publish it. So in principle, it has been agreed finally. Let us proceed. It's good that we are having now a debate, not just a presentation. I think that Guzel and Maiva will probably add more food for reflections. Guzel is the National Director of the National Agency of Financial Studies, and in the framework of our project, they are now surveying financial literacy in the country. We would like to hear from her in more detail. What are the current obstacles with our community, whether they have learned something or not, and whether we have probably these particular goals have been identified, and the related KPIs have been identified for that based on that data. Well, good afternoon, dear colleagues. Thank you for your presentations. Any strategy presumes the evaluation and monitoring. I'd like to focus on monitoring and evaluation. As you know, the very national strategy for higher financial education, some indicators, evaluation assessment indicators were set, including 2 groups of indicators. First set of indicators is based on various surveys to be held. It's a set of numbers about the part of the community who are informed about some financial education, financial literacy basics. The second set of indicators relates to the size of faculty involved in the process, number of educational and other institutions, and the number of regions. I will not list all of them. They are available in the strategy itself. I would like to dwell on a set of indicators number 2, and tell you what issues are the indicators based on social studies data, and why we focused on those in particular. I will start off with the basic evaluation of financial literacy. We conduct many studies, both subjectively and objectively. based on a set of various indicators, and they converge. And we have about 12-15. See that about 12-15% of the community have a good basic financial literacy level. All the rest, probably the Trinity. Well, no. That's rather satisfactory level of literacy. Overall, this level is fairly low, quite inadequate. In this regard, I always call upon, say that do not throw ash on our heads. Russia has fairly good indicators. Russia ranks 9 in G20 among the OECD, then it ranks 25 in the OECD member states and other countries involved in the process. Willy-nilly, the financial literacy level is fairly low or mediocre. That is why these numbers, this issue is ubiquitous. A positive fact is that the community is motivated to higher financial literacy. Will not do the impossible. Every second has updated this subject and is ready to move in this direction. We should focus well on the indicators that are set forth in the national strategy, and I will designate right away why these particular indicators. They are the basics of financial literacy. There is nothing complicated about financial products, derivatives, futures, just the basics, and mostly in the context of personal financial safety. What's in the basis of the basics, and probably the mission of the state is to ensure this level irrespective of sex, age, social, professional status, and residence. What are these indicators and what the baseline numbers we do have? Well, indicator 1 is the share of the community who understand the balance of risk and income of financial instruments. There is a theory of financial risks. The higher the income is offered to you, the higher the interest rate, the more the risk of a loss is. We have fairly good understanding. 36% are ignorant of this linkage, and from year on year there is also an impact of financial literacy improvement programs. So this share of the community has been rising. Another important factor as for consumer financial protection, well, it's a possibility to identify that you can see a fraudster, a crook before you, or similar organization. It's a matter of recognizing a financial pyramid. There is a set of questions about that. And one of the options, the options is that a financial agency offers to you some guaranteed income of 20%, for instance, at the year, and it's impossible, as you can understand. And unfortunately, the Russians are hard to put to sort it out, to identify such simple things. Further, another important indicator that reflects the extent, to what extent the consumer that has encountered the infringement on his or her rights, what he or she rights has, what organizations can help him. 88% resulting from a 2017 survey were ignorant of what institutions can help and protect them. Financial market. 12% are knowledgeable about that. The Russian Consumer Protection Agency, the central bank, and there are many other options of the prosecutors' offices, the collection agencies. There's a set of other options. Further, another important point, that is people's readiness for contingencies and their awareness to build their safety cushion, that is savings to be made. Only 1/3 of our current community make savings, 2/3 outside the process. They are in the risk margin. 44% explain they do not have this opportunity. 19% just do not make savings, although they can. And to a large extent, this problem results from the lack of a smart approach to accounting of expenditures and income. As soon as you're aware of that, you can manage and be sure in your future. Same with accountants. If debit and credit do not coincide, either there is a cash gap or a bankruptcy. It's about the same story. Now, one of other indicators is about community awareness of financial arithmetics. Well, some issues are here, probably the key ones relating to the awareness how to calculate a simple percentage, a complicated percentage, complex percentage, and the awareness that money has value that changes over time. It's a fairly simple form of how to show these objectives to the community. If you have 10,000 rubles, put it as a deposit in a bank, and how much you'll get with 7%. So every second can cope with this task. Well, overall, it's probably not bad if every second is capable to calculate. The basics of maths have been mastered by fairly many people. Now about comparing the conditions of financial service provision before the consumer has made his choice. It's also the basics of proper financial behavior. You can see these outbreaks or some suspicions. Someone can offer a very high interest rate, for example, that differs significantly from the mean. It's something stated reply that about 53% said they do compare. We understand there is the flip side of this issue. That, well, I've heard frequently some comment that when we voice these issues, that every second says he does compare all these conditions, but is he or she well informed about these conditions? This question should be put primarily to financial institutions. As recent as last week, I talked to one of the lawyers in consumer protection, and he told me one story. One person insured his health after he had received a policy. He injured seriously in a road accident his leg, and then he appealed to the insurer. But it turned out that the insurance agreement put it like the policy is valid only 2 months after the respective agreement has been signed. Therefore, the person is unaware of such risks, and cannot be sure. Even if he compared all these conditions, it's not a fact that in the future he could be able to sort out all the complexities, all the legal aspects. These are the basic indicators. They are all reflected in the national strategy, and we'll see later how all the situation will proceed year on year. But willy-nilly, we have the point of departure, and we can compare. And the plenary sessions, I guess Sobyanin put it quite good, that the strategies should not be stale documents. They debated the regional development strategy, and I liked this statement because the world indeed develops quite significantly, and our vision of this issue is where should we develop our national strategy? Well, firstly, as for the target audiences, they are the people of older generation, people with low income, and students. They are well defined in the strategy, and we see that it has to be completed and expanded with rural residents. We see that across all the indicators, rural areas lag behind significantly. And the development, well, more focus should be given to digitalization. We had an interesting session yesterday about digital assets, cyber values, crypto values, and there is a bubble around that. Many used to perceive this tool as, well, I can sort it out, I can become rich shortly, and the digital environment should be integrated in the agenda. And point 3, we can proceed to specialized financial knowledge with regard to the fairly conservative financial tools like T-bonds, like investment accounts and insurance. And I like to say finally, and I like this slide, financial literacy does not exist just per se as separated from consumer protection and financial services as available and the role of financial institutions. We can teach, enlighten, educate, but if this process does not involve the financial institutions, then unfortunately our effort will fall hollow. For this model to be operable, we need to involve all the three parties. Protect and simplify as efficient. Thank you, Guzell. Thank you for this food for reflections. We are a bit behind the schedule, so I'd like to ask follow-on speakers to stick to the timeline. I would say it would be logical. Well, the issue, the questions that have been raised should be answered. The official of the central bank, Alexei Simonovsky, advisor to the chairman of the bank. Yes, please, microphone. Thank you. As you can see, I'm well armed, but not dangerous. If the presentation is available, I'll just rush through the presentation because my mission as the entire central bank, not to show what we are not doing, but rather, given the format of the event, to discuss the complexities and the issues in developing financial literacy, financial education, and to look up in a nutshell, the key areas, what is being done by the central bank, and I'd like to give a brief comment. It's great to have a strategy, because the small springs and flows flow into a large river. Same the areas of competence of various agencies, ministries, and regions, they've also flowed into the strategy. It does not mean that only one major river exists. There are these springs and small flows. They always serve the purpose of the river for implementing, in fact, its strategy. Now some words about the strategy itself that Mr. Storchak highlighted. This is the strategy implementation pattern. You can see it here. That the interagency coordination board that will operate. In fact,
so the practical steps by the Bank of Russia, they are related to the strategy implementation, but this is not the main thing. Now we have highlighted those problem patterns or behavioral stereotypes of the population, some kind of elements that have become pretty evident as a result of our joint efforts in terms of implementation, putting this financial literacy into practice. And since one of the most important objectives in terms of financial literacy boils down to answering question: who should be trained, how we should do it, and what we should assess as a result. So who and how, these are two main type of questions that we should try to answer. Because let's take two persons, one of the same age, with one of the same financial status, with more or less similar habits, but as to their behavioral patterns and financial logic, they may have different approaches. One person could be more or less cautious and assess risks, but another person, according to this definition, I don't think that this definition is really standard, but nevertheless, it's a frustrated subject that would go nuts and would even drown. And his only hand with the slogan would be still above the surface of the water. But there must be people around who would not let him dip into this river and be drowned. So what am I driving at? I would say that, of course, we should educate our children, and we should try to separate the young people from the so-called people who would go extremes, because so financial literacy should be there. That's for sure. On the other hand, just for the sake of illustration of what, as let's say, in the course of development of the process of financial literacy or financial education, it's of utmost importance to be aware with whom you are dealing with, how to make the selection. I mean, we should properly train the faculty, the teachers, the professors. And apart from these problems, we also have positive patterns. So the certain part of the population is quite well literate in terms of financial issues, and they, no matter that they did not attend any special training courses. Just a few words, beyond the presentation content. I would like to say, as I said in the preamble of my presentation, speaking about those challenges related to growth and how we are going to find the way out of these situations. So one of the potential for growth means, the growth in the volumes of rendering some kind of services related to financial literacy. So this is a natural problem of the so-called manpower resource. It goes without saying that these activities related to financial literacy, it was not at random that these people would get together and put forward some recommendations, because it requires quite a lot of effort and and good education, because it will be a kind of an exponential growth that would take a number of years. Because if we just rely on ourselves, let's say the Bank of Russia or the staff members of the bank would be able to make a further progress in terms of financial literacy. What we're planning to do, and so we should certainly involve the volunteers. Yeah, it was already mentioned in two presentations that were voiced before me. I mean participation of the general population in the process of acquiring financial literacy. Not only just attend and listen, but also help and promote, actively promote. So the Bank of Russia believes that we should really engage all these volunteers, and so that we could organize the activities, no matter that I don't like this word, but nevertheless, we cannot get along without it. And then the subject related to teaching somebody, and if it's just a teacher, it won't work, or it will be a worst-case scenario in terms of education, when a semi-literate person would like to teach illiterate people in something good, something really useful. That's why training of the members of the faculty is certainly of utmost importance. And we have not just plans of action regarding this, but there is a really well trained contingent of such people, such teachers and professors, so that we could create proper conditions for that. And then there is an issue of transition from quantity to quality. Let's say from some singular, interventions to systems approach. And actually, at the initial stages of developing the financial literacy, so there could be some activities that we enjoyed popularity, but those were just some individual sparks or small breakthroughs, in a limited audience, within a limited audience. So they could not be related to systems approach. But now, at the current stage, at issue is that we should do everything on the basis of the systems approach. And so that this process of acquiring financial literacy would progress successfully. I'm not going to talk about all subtleties and details, but still, on the one hand, the process is underway. It's really necessary and very important, and it goes without saying that there could be some, I'm talking about some logistical organizational issues, but one of the methodological or technical issues, how to evaluate the knowledge. And then I was talking about the behavioral patterns. It's not just the end of the road, it's just the start of the road, or anyway, some initial steps along this road. When we can define certain patterns, then we should adapt certain curricula and also train the members of the faculty to deliver the subject. But the main thing consists in the following. I would rather believe or trust that in connection with the financial literacy acquisition, our population would behave more reasonably. And just from the bottom of my heart, I would say that the policy of the government and that of the Bank of Russia policy, in the first place, it provides for the population in its majority. They would pay attention to the prospects, to the future, related to the stability that would be predominant, and they should not take some sudden steps. But as to the financial literacy issues, so we should support additionally those trends and those results that have already been obtained. And in my opinion, if we have to talk about it, what is more important, to teach how to do it or give a good piece of advice not to do something. Then, first and foremost, as for the users of this information concerning financial literacy, these are reliable advice, what should not be done, what decisions should not be made. So I'm now addressing the Güzel presentation. This is one of the topics that has been under discussion. This activity, these are the cryptocurrency or digital assets. In my opinion, the legalization of this phenomenon, so it's a big question. And it should start from the following. Just in the first place, we have to properly understand the financial and economic nature of this issue, because without understanding, proper understanding, we cannot move forward. Of course, it is specified in the law. There are words, but what stands behind these words? It's hard to say. And this, I do agree to this by saying that financial literacy, it's a live line of activity, and it should respond to the needs, I mean, multifaceted financial needs. And, well, there could be quite a number of questions to be addressed to you. Maybe we better ask Alexander Mikhailovich. So it has been truly interesting to listen to what the people from the regions would say, but I have to attend the meeting chaired by the Prime Minister. I have to be there, so thank you. Before giving the floor to Alexander Mikhailovich, I would like to invite Oleg Rusakov. Well, he is the head of the Department of the Consumer Rights Protection of Rospotrebnadzor. As I said in the beginning, that Larisa Kalinchenko has just joined our ranks, Minister of Finance of the Stavropolsky Krai and Deputy Prime Minister of the government of the Stavropolsky Krai. So now I would rather give the floor to you. So we would like to listen to what people say, not just from Moscow, but from other places of the Russian Federation. You know, the experience of the Tomskaya Oblast has been circulated widely. So we conducted the press conference in the TASS agency. And Kyrgyzstan is also made a very good progress in this direction. So I'm not going to speak about some specific activities or quote some figures. We have the head of the Regional Center of Financial Literacy, so you can also ask questions directly to him. But I would like to stress some points anyway when it comes to the improved financial literacy in the Tomskaya Oblast. So we have been dealing with these issues for many years. We started actually in 2002, but in 2010 we initially published a newspaper and then a magazine, a journal, and then we conducted quite a number of exhibitions devoted to this topic, your personal finances. And I would never believe that there will be a national strategy on financial literacy, that we are going to discuss this topic on a wider scale. You know, we stand from the fact that this project has always been of an applied nature, and it remains to be an applied project. Because, why so? Because due to volatility of our income, so sometimes we have to also make loans. Initially, those were bonds. Initially, there was tens of millions of rubles, but now the people have bonds for 3 billion rubles. It's a pretty serious thing, and we had to explain people what about these bonds, what about this income, because our first bonds were in paper form, so how to have some financial interest here. Now we're working on one more project. Anyway, it was an applied nature, I mean, improved financial literacy. And maybe one more peculiarity of this project is boiled down to the fact because some selected people were dealing with this. It's a financial center of financial literacy, a public-private partnership. It's a separate line of activity. And of course, the subsidies were also provided. Speaking about the financing, sufficiency of financing. Of course, as they say, no money, no honey. So that's why we should have enough financial resources in order to do something. Now we're allocating about 17 million rubles. Whether it will be true for next year, for 2019, but nevertheless we allocated this amount of financial resources for the purpose. And now the Ministry of Finance is an active stakeholder here, and the situation has changed drastically. We started to receive some help, not in terms of money, but of course in terms of, let's say, personnel training. And we hope that as for the methodological and technical documents and materials, we do receive them also on printed on paper or in silica, the way the strategy of financial literacy is being implemented. Of course, we do need some textbooks and manuals as well. So I'm trying not to quote any figures, but nevertheless, I can't but get along without them. Maybe some selected. If you have loan or financing, etc. So the involvement of the Minister of Finance, actually it has materialized itself in the personnel training. So those were the workers of the Center of Financial Literacy. The population of our oblast is not that big, just 1 million people. We have 650 teachers that have been trained, and then 400 students, future teachers, were also trained, and 260 financial consultants have been trained as well. So our non-governmental center will perform this function of improving financial literacy. It's like a resource center, so there are branches or representative offices of this center, and the manpower resources that have been already trained for the purpose. They are intimately integrated into this education work being done by this center. So, and what is the result of this participation jointly with the Minister of Finance in the implementation of financial literacy? Every sixth pupil in Tomskaya Oblast would get access to financial literacy. Every second school introduced financial literacy as a part of the extracurriculum activities. So there could be, I could also quote some other figures, even without statistics, I can say. So we were talking about the visiting activity of different sites. There have been quite a number of complaints, by the way. Over the recent years, the regional center of financial
and there is a lot more than those applications or complaints to the Russian Consumer Protection Oversight Agency. But it looks that with all the well, the standard answers are given by the Russian Consumer Protection Agency, by the central bank. Furthermore, I noticed that over the last year, being the head of the financial department, well, I don't know what your story is, but everybody who come to Moscow, who come with complaints about banks, probably all of those flow to me and you. And we'll assign standard replies probably every day, you and me. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't have, time to meet with everybody. But the regional financial literacy center, well, after all these applications and complaints, and then a meeting follows normally. Well, this is what I wanted to discuss. Well, there are some success stories on record since 2010. But what's the obstacle? I don't expect a problem at this angle. A program has emerged, the National Financial Literacy Strategy, and also the related action plan has emerged with the central bank. You said you dislike the word the action plan, but what can we do? Well, I have hundreds and hundreds of action plans in my life. Nonetheless, the central bank is a centralized directory agency, and this action plan was made known to us. We tried to step in, to use our experience, to make use of our experience there, but no good. You may not change even a single letter there, because you know it's the document of the central bank. And well, for a joke, I would say that a letter emerged to the governor asking, please exclude from the debate one department. Well, but we have working with it for long, and even if you like to be excluded, it's impossible because we initiated all of that. It's good that all of them come together. All of us have come together here, and I think we'll find a solution for the Tomsk region to implement the program we have been dealing with for so many years. Furthermore, we have always worked with the central bank. We have always invited them to our meetings, and we are now collaborating with the central bank. I said earlier, our project has always been an applied one. We are thankful to the central bank that they have taken us on a pilot project to develop a marketplace to sell our securities. Roughly, any person sitting on a sofa could buy our securities. So we have 3 billion already sold, but we have a lot more where to grow with securities to sell to the community, although it's rather risky. When you don't know who has purchased your debt, yeah. But in this case, it's all clear, name by name. So we are carrying out this project with the CB, and using the opportunity, we see here Alexei Simonovsky probably will. Well, this misunderstanding will be cleared. You may start everything from scratch. Our local employees tried to start like that, but they have 190 schools. I don't know how many kindergartens we have. Yeah, many kindergartens. Yeah, the scales are different in the scope and scales. I think we'll find a method to strike a common understanding. So financial literacy is not just an educational project for enlightenment. We also see it as the financial market development project. I mentioned the pilot marketplace project. We have found one more tool. We are doing first one thing and then another thing later over these years. About 6 years ago, an idea dawned upon us to establish a prize, an award, like a People's Award, like the Prestige Prize. And we handed to various financial institutions. There are several nominations, but after community poll, yeah, there's certain methodology for community polling. You need to consider all markups, expert opinion. There are all the subtleties. Nonetheless, we have been awarding, we have been handing this award for several years, and it motivates financial institutions in Tyumen region. Kaliningrad region was a pioneer. Modern technologies, IT, allows us to come together, all of us. I'm already overstayed my presentation time. Then the Altai Republic and the Amal-Nenets Republic have joined in. Already 5 regions. They hand out this award. So I would like to say, please step in, join us, use our experience, and the more we communicate, the more the regional voice and the voice of financial institutions will be heard, including the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank. So what's the outcome? What's the dry matter of all of that? Has financial literacy changed? It's hard to detect any direct correlation there, but we're always interested in that, trying to understand. There is some statistics conducted by the Central Bank. We can say there are some other particulars. But this project has been underway for many years with us. The share of overdues is 15% lower than in Siberian Federal District. Debt overdues. As for mortgage loans, it's 50% of what others have as overdue and outstanding. This is the data of the Central Bank. Tomsk region community population seeks more targeted loans rather compared with the average for the Siberian Federal District. And we have the highest share of those who take mortgage loans. And the number of subsidies given out is lower than the average for the district. We have certain, as we say, packaged products that we are willing to share with all the participants of the project. We have the monthly family magazine that has been issued for many years, about also including personal finance, the personal finance section. We have also children's magazine. We have video lessons, in the internet portal. We are ready to share all of that with all of you. We have also the past record of children's performances, theatrical performances. There was a hectic demand for that. Thank you. Thank you, Alexander. Well, it's hard to stop anyone because it's quite a rich experience that we can see. But we are a bit late with our schedule. You'll probably extend for another 15 minutes if you don't mind our session. What has been said, some modest numbers have been submitted. We can say that in Tomsk region or in other pilot regions, we see now quite sustainable models of the interfaces between various agencies and sectors, and we would like that they will not be ruined in the framework of the strategy, but develop further, and this well-tested experience yields fruit. Mr. Simonovsky would like to comment on that, or later, what has been said? Or you'll just take account of that in Tomsk region? Even just to look up the numbers, then you'll see that the number of the teachers trained in Tomsk region exceeds anything elsewhere. So we'd like not to trash this experience. I have only one remark. I will just monitor the situation. And I'm not ready to say, yes, dear Alexander, what you are soliciting will be put in practice. I need first to understand what the matter is in detail. Yeah, it's about the need for coordination. Let's proceed. A lot has been said about teacher training. financial literacy at schools. I think Andrei Petrov, the head of general education of the Ministry of Education, it's his it's his promotion, his new status, but the same functionality, of course, education, it's education, all that. Can you tell us what's underway and what your plans are for the future within the national financial literacy strategy? Thank you, and thank you to all the speakers. Many details have been given about the implementation of some our strategy elements, components. When this forum was being organized, I was the head of the department. Now I've been an advisor to the Minister of Education. We are under restructuring, so we can announce right away such a change. And for correct protocol, I'm an advisor to the Minister of Education now. We work a lot on this issue with the partners who have their own initiatives and programs. It's quite a comfortable partnership for us. It's an extensive issue. Guzel showed you earlier the numbers relating to all the population of Russia. It's a multifaceted, multi-sided task. On the one hand, the community should be educated across the board for smart financial strategies and planning, identify and not identify problems and not to succumb to financial fraud, and to tailor well the financial products that are snowballing in number. And objective number 2, Timur said earlier how to calculate $50 or not $50 per person to be spent. I believe that the strategy that has been identified and approved by the government, and the roadmap as amended to be approved, it identified the optimum way. Even if it does not yield fruit tomorrow, it will give it in the future. We are working in education. We have focused our investment on education. It will allow us to spend parsimoniously our available resources. When we teach the teacher will teach several generations of children. If we draft manuals, learning programs, they will serve for a certain time period, maybe 5 years, or even longer. Normally, maybe 7 years, a manual would serve, certainly to be updated over time, because the trends around us and financial patterns and financial behavior change. So regular updates are normal. So I believe it's an optimum system, the strategy that has been approved. It's a good tool in order to put in the minds of younger generation the proper, the correct skills. I'd like to emphasize that the president of the country set an objective to the new Ministry of Education for the Russian education and school to be included in the top 10 international education schools within 5 years. There are various assessments and metering systems, but the independent evaluations, international scoring scales that are seen variously by Russia, but Russia is always, anyway, in at the top of these lists. In some, we are terrific. For instance, elementary school graduates, we are the leader in those surveys. It's a bit worse with the PISA comprehensive survey, or OECD. It was also mentioned today, where we were top 30 or top 20. Importantly, this PISA comprehensive scoring covers several parameters or indicators. We understand well where we lose. That is, where there was no Soviet tradition. That is collective project activity, some functional literacy elements, including also financial literacy. But as for the latter, we do not lose, by the way. We are among the leaders under various surveys, and this survey is held among 15-year-old children, 9-year students, school children. Of course, the PISA survey will be one of the key components of the scoring system. How the presidential decree defines it, that we should become top 10 educational systems within 5 years. And we, the Ministry of Education, certainly give high focus to that. But we look at that with high optimism, with such partners, the Finance Ministry and the Central Bank probably will not perish. What has been implemented under roadmaps currently, it makes an impression, to put it mildly. What do we have currently? We have the financial literacy, financial education program that has been established ubiquitously in all the secondary education system. As for elementary, secondary, and general education.
So today we have 17 program or curricula and 17 scientific and technological complexes. So we have more than 70 textbooks and manuals that are being used for the purpose. So the champions of this process is either Central Bank or Ministry of Finance, or in collaboration with each other, but the scientific and educational organizations are really implementing this into practice. And so we have the Higher School of Economy, the Moscow University, Financial University is also, in other words, all major expert foci in this domain. So all of them, they are attending this forum yesterday and today. They are in the swing, and they also bring about the best possible knowledge for our children. How do we do it? We have also an optional course. Well, it has always been there in Tomskaya Oblast, for instance, and also other territories. And the interest displayed to this optional course is invariably on the rise. And secondly, but if the person does not display any interest towards this topic, how shall we be able to teach them fundamentals, some basics of this? We're not going to make them nuclear scientists, let's say nuclear physicists, or let's say some Newton laws, or some Ohm law, or the Ohm law, or some other things, many more things. The same for the financial literacy. We actually made a choice. It was a joint decision. We selected a list of mandatory subjects. Also, the key issue is the economy, law, and history, and also social studies, and many. And for the primary grades, primary school, so this topic happens to be like the world around us. So your time is up. I'm about to wrap up. All this is being put into practice. I would like to have some critical observations. We have a kind of a standstill along this transition process. Since May, this kind of reorganization is underway, and it, of course, slows down the process of creation and completion of such content-intensive work that we used to carry on before the presidential decree was issued. I mean, newly developed educational standards. But this work is continued, and all this work, de jure, would be launched under the aegis of the newly established ministry. And I'm very satisfied with the following. So there was some kind of a duplication in the processes. We had a very good agreement. We have had a very good agreement with the Ministry of Education, Science, and the Central Bank. Signed with Olga Vasilieva and Elvira Nabiulina. So now we have a very good strategy on hand, approved by the government. But now we have resolved all the issues, and this roadmap is an integral part of this strategy, and it will be implemented from a single center. So that's why at the top level, so this documentation should be finalized and streamlined with the educational institutions, with the education authorities, and also with the financial authorities of both the federation and the regional level. So I will try to save some time. So if there are some questions to the Ministry of Finance, I would be happy to answer. And as a part of our communication, I mean, preschool education, it was not discussed at length, but let's say new kindergartens are being opened, and it enjoys demand. The parents are insisting because, let's say, teaching kids financial literacy lessons, this is a very important thing, and we should make it happen. There will be a curriculum on financial literacy for preschool children, And on the basis of this, we shall launch a very interesting monitoring process. And Plekhanov University had this assignment upon our request. So changes in the educational standards for the preschool education. And I think this will make it possible for us so to streamline this educational process, not just secondary school, high school, or higher education, but also including preschool education. Because, you know, today, so 1,800,000 first graders have started their educational process at primary schools. So the number of our population of our country, I mean the number of school children that attend the schools, it's 15,200,000 school children. They attend schools starting from the 3rd of September this year. I hope that I have managed to answer questions. I would like to know that we have also developed some curricula and training courses for kindergartens, for nursery schools, and we should not reinvent the wheel. We should also use already gained experience, effective enough. Colleagues, so we have a number of the speakers still to address the audience, because we have quite a long lunch break, about 2 hours. But maybe we better listen to what the people from the regions would say. So, Oleg Vladimirovich, if you do not mind, so you would be given a chance to talk to the audience. I mean, protection of the consumer rights issues. But if there are some short questions to Andrei Yevgenyevich, very brief questions. Ekaterina Lavrinova was the first. Please, you speak into the mic. Do you still have some questions to me? Of course. Lavrinova Ekaterina. My question is pretty simple. A year ago, there was a meeting in the State Duma, and we discussed the concept of the this financial literacy education for the preschool system. And this is question number one. And there was a state standard regarding the social studies. So it was kind of obsolete, I mean, those suggestions that were put forward. Could you please throw additional light on this? I mean, the timeline, and, you know, this concept has come into being fairly recently. I mean, as a standalone document. Regarding our general education. At the government level, we have approved a concept on mathematics and also on language studies and literature. At the level of the social consensus, we have a concept on history lessons. Anyway, there is a roadmap behind it, and everybody follows this roadmap. So as to the social cultures, like physical culture, fine arts, and then basics of life capacities. So all these topics were properly developed and made ready for approval by the government. So the government decided that it's better to pass sectoral decisions on that. And this kind of approach would be quite sufficient in order to write this into a kind of law. So on the 15th of May, there was a presidential decree on restructuring of the executive bodies. That's why we are now at the stage of reform. And I think that during the collegium meeting at the Ministry of Education, this issue of the concept would be tabled for discussion. And we have developed all the backgrounders and the necessary documentation for that. My prognosis is as follows. You know, the governmental resolution on reforms of the ministries, all the organizational procedures should be finished by the 31st of December, and the collegium meeting on this issue will take place next year, 2019. The second question regarding standards. I have partially touched upon the issue by saying that we are going to continue this knitting to this work. So introduction of the mandatory educational standard for the 5th and 9th graders. This discussion was quite turbulent, was quite active. It was a real spring in the educational domain. But now they have to finalize these educational standards, and all the necessary changes will certainly be introduced into these documents, and the formulations of the standards, the wording of the standards, they would be agreed upon with the interpretation of the standards themselves. Because these are two different documents and they determine two different things. They also create the trend. Thank you. A very brief question. Thank you for a very interesting presentation. How would you comment the TV channel on educational television so that it would be free of charge, accessible to everybody? If you turn on this free channel on educational television, you know, Timur, it's just the opinion. I would support any reasonable initiative in the sphere of education. It was a good question. Who would visit that website? You see, if it's an educational television channel, if maybe it's not meant for us or for our parents, pensioners, maybe they would rather skip watching the TV serials, but there could be quite an advanced internet resource, like digital integrated operable resources. And children, it's quite popular among children, and the parents of those children would collect information. There is a Yandex platform or some, let's say, tutors like RU. So the Russian electronic school, it does exist, and they can share much more. And you can upload the video content directly. If it's meant for the contemporary schooling, and they would easily gain access. Thank you, Andrei Ilyich. I would like to quote one figure. Within the framework of the Financial Literacy Week, we had an online parents' assembly meeting. And during one day, so there were more than 1 million parents attended this session. So in terms of effectiveness, yes, I forgot to refer to this. All right, let's move forward. I would give the floor to representative for one more pilot territory. This time it's Siberia. It's time and again. They are taking the lead in many ways. We have different regions represented here, but one more interesting region with their equally interesting experience. It's Pritupa from the Altaysky Krai. Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. The information has been already voiced. It's of a general nature. But what do we do? What direction we should move for, let's say, tomorrow in terms of our program implementation. But we differ from the Tomskaya Oblast in our approaches. And the reasons of participations were absolutely different. The percentage of the rural population makes up 44%. It's twice as high as average in Russia. And uneven distribution of the population and curtailing the work of the financial institution has sharpened the need for better information and access to information. That was one of the challenges that we were after. And I can surely say today, as in support of those arguments voiced by Alexander Mikhailovich, I mean the loans made available and debt payment. So it's quite low. So we have organized proper interplay, interaction, and it is quite efficacious and fruitful with our authorities and also in the with the municipal governments and with the professional association. We have the CRY Center of Financial Literacy that has been set up, and the biggest one is in compliance with the project signed by the central bank. We have 17 tutors trained, 60 teachers have been already trained, and 1,322 teachers and professors that have undergone this training, and they are working at the educational institutions. And as a follow-up to what has been already mentioned, the 120 different educational institutions, 100% of the municipal schools are participating in this. 100% of the institutions are also participating in this process, and that technical and organizational basis that was created for this purpose. We also expect some more materials to be developed. And then the Institute of Advanced Training for the educational workers. So the setting where this training was delivered. So we're also cooperating with our neighbors from Kemera, from the Republic of Altai as well. Those who have already undergone this training, we have, with Kemera, the agreement is signed, but the one with the Altaisky Krai is in the process of signing. So training materials, training manuals, kits, etc. So we believe that we are on the right track, and naturally, this topic has been already mentioned. I mean, the movement of volunteers. This year it has been really highlighted. People are rather receptive in terms of developing some public infrastructure. So this project does not require a lot of resources, but it requires a systems approach. And further improving the materials developed by the Federal Center.
Supplied nature, not just drawing investment funding like in the Tomsk region, but in education, promoting various educational products, also the clarification campaign involving also not only teachers but also parents. And the off-budget sector, just ordinary companies and firms, and like IT-related products that were developed, posters, calendars, and at the end of 2 or 3 years period, you may see that the flamboyant slogans, mottos that were applied, they persist and retained. And independently of the end of the time period, they continue to live onwards. I'd like to say thanks once again to our colleagues for our joint effort, and we are willing for our continued cooperation. Thank you. Let us give the floor now to our pilot region, and then we'll take some minutes for Q&A. I have the pleasure to introduce, we are from Siberia, we are moving to Europe of Russia, Larisa Kalinchenko, Vice Chair of the Government of Stavropol region, the Minister of Finance of Stavropol region. It was said today by Mr. Storchak that Kyrgyzstan is also learning it, and the Altai region and the Stavropol region, they also participated at our conference in Armenia last July. All the 6 countries of the project, they revealed a high interest, and they are studying these 2 regions' experience, and there are operating efficient models on hand. We also help other regions not to start things from scratch, but let them borrow the existing models. Larisa, please. Thank you. Dear Anna, dear colleagues and friends, the Stavropol region is implementing this program. What did we need it for, by the way? Similar to our colleagues, we held in 2015 a poll, and we saw that in many issues that describe financial knowledge, we are much lower than in other regions and the national average. At our last meeting, when the results of the national study were voiced, and individually the North Caucasus region's districts were described. As for our Stavropol region, yes, unfortunately that was the fact. And we still have obstacles with cheated investment unit holders in housing, and we found that financial knowledge should be raised, improved further. So identified our areas of activity. What's financial literacy? We try to identify for ourselves. It's like a set of skills and behavior patterns. Information educational programs and entertaining programs, but probably best learning goes through entertainment or games. Well, as we're working with various target community groups, while identifying the forms and methods of our work, we were guided primarily by the particulars of these groups. Lectures, workshops, and presentations were used and as targeting children, adults, and others. But the level of perception, if we consider workshops, it's varied. So packaging various forms of work contingent on the target group, of course, is important. What you can see on the slide, I'd like to focus. When we discuss an IT campaign, an information or an educational campaign, we should also train the journalists regarding news or story delivery within our programs of youth and children's financial literacy, so that every journalist should be aware what he or she discusses. If we are great in something, but what's the purpose of that? As financiers, we decided it's easier to arrange for a competition between journalists, define nominations for mass media, and probably to give them high bonuses and prizes, awards. I'd like to share with you. As for education, the educational components, clearly we need an educational infrastructure, let alone that well-trained teachers, thanks to the Federal Project Center that has trained more than 1,000 teachers for us in the region. we in the region, we also train, in particular, kindergarten caretakers using the experience of other regions. And given the experience of Altai region, we like to have this process as uninterrupted, including sharing experience. But using this opportunity that Andrei is nearby here, we need manuals, visual aids, equipment. Hopefully we'll get all that in the near future. Yet, at a secondary education school, there is an obstacle. Our children are too much loaded. At our meeting in Yerevan, Armenia, one of the speakers said they were like slaves towing a barge. I understand we should use a federal educational standard as applied to everybody. Currently, given our volunteer mentality, well, we have a big request. We have trained 1,000 teachers in our region, but how many are required in the entire country? Many resources have been spent, but the yield, systemic yield, will not be there until we use the federal educational standards, even if by fragments, by sections. I think the entire educational community should think over that. The entertainment component in learning, using games, well, there are many various practices. I will not dwell on it. We, for one, we use the KVN, the entertainment connoisseurs movement. So we hold such competitions, the popular song competitions. We have quizzes, more than 6,000 such participants under this educational entertainment component for senior age children and students. It's a gist for them. They're happy to go there. As for educational campaigns, well, we are open to anything. But the content varies contingent on which mass media delivers that. Well, hard copies are read mostly by seniors, and they should be given one type of material, the delivery of that. The youth live more in the internet, so it will be a different content delivery. And TV, of course, similar to radio broadcasting. Well, we use TV when we cover various events with news stories. We mostly
Это простые шаги, которые позволят вам достичь финансового и личного успеха. Так делают успешные люди. Делайте так и вы!
Fingram26.ru. Знания для жизни. Проект Министерства финансов Ставропольского края.
Ну, весело, да, во всяком?
Well, it's entertaining, yeah. It's like a merrymaking, yeah. But we are modest people. We represent Stavropol Krai as a hub of the North Caucasus region. Well, as for microfinancing agencies, over lending of the population in our region, all of it is confirmed by evidence. Yes, indeed, the level of financial knowledge is mediocre, and we border on all the regions of the North Caucasus, and we believe that we could be helpful for them. There are prerequisites on hand for that. Training the tutors is carried out by our local university. teachers are trained at also at the North Caucasus University as a branch of the Moscow National Economy University. By the way, we have a foundation, a fund that does not finance our activity there, but the volunteers who are pioneers, they continue the work. We hold the annual Interregional Conference on Financial Literacy, and we collaborate there. Also in replicating the experience. It's very well established with the Karachaevo-Cherkess Republic. They are quite well motivated. We have a city quiz. They take away their second or third place and they run away. They are happy. So we share our experts with them when they hold their activities. We have lots of partners. We expect from those, I always say, we have mutual love. After I mentioned education, now about the central bank. Well, while duplicating what was said by my colleagues from other regions, we have, as a matter of fact, two parallel processes underway here. One process, we use some past record and developments. We go to schools, we train teachers, and the central bank goes there by itself to the same schools. So we put some trouble in the hearts of our colleagues, some tumult, some mess in the minds of our children. So I would like to go in pace abreast with all of us. We should be one whole team. I have a joke at the end of the session. One gets from the beauty salon. She gets out from a beauty salon. Her husband was stunned by her appearance. She said, "At least I've taken a try. I like to be beautiful here as well." At the end of this financial literacy effort, let's work hand in hand under the same coordinator. We cooperate thanks to our high school with the Russian Consumer Rights, Consumer Protection Agency. We have many partners. We have business-like relations with them. Well, I've mentioned some beauty lessons to be used at school. I would like to expand our educational campaign. We see or sensibilization campaign. We also have it on our TV, but following the experience of our colleagues, we'd like also to establish one regional TV program on financial literacy. I wish all the best to you. You are financially smart here, and our country sooner or later will be wealthy as well. Thank you, Larissa. I have a remark. Sure, you'll be allowed soon. But with this flamboyant presentation, so emotional, I would say Larissa has recently turned one of her new birth years. So I'm glad. I'd like my best wishes to you. Oh, there's another birthday today of Alexei Simonovsky. Oh, we have so many birthday prize winners, so to say. I have a remark. I'd like also to congratulate everybody on the Day of Knowledge, which is past. It's our national holiday. Well, I believe we'll never leave this room for the lunch. One more point. Well, as for the federal educational standards, I would say had the regulatory environment has not allowed us to work with these great developments that have been highlighted here, Catherine would not have been so friendly in putting these questions to me when the whole concept will be approved. Well, I just asked her to be careful and cautious. Well, the educational programs that have been approved following the standard, they would help us to use those programs, so the faculty, the teachers do not violate anything. Yeah, we just would like to have it not as on a voluntary basis. Yeah, as well arranged, dear colleagues. Well, if you remember, we'll continue this session We'll change the set of our speakers. We'll continue after lunch at 3 p.m. If you have some urgent, undelayable question to this audience, to the speakers, then, or some comments, please, yes. If not, well, yeah, there's one question more urgent than lunch. Well, we'll be given 3 hours for debate, but it's still little. Well, it's a highly relevant issue. We should meet more. Hello, dear colleagues. I'm from Sberbank. I've worked in financial literacy for long. I'm glad that we've come together in this room. Previously, 1.5 years ago, the Ministry of Finance gathered people. Separately, all agencies gathered people. Now, finally, we are all in one. Only that, among all the participants, I cannot see here a business person or financial institutions. Hopefully, they will crop up after lunch. I have a question. I'm glad. I mean, well, our business colleagues, were they considered by the approved roadmap? So far, your activities did not consider the opportunities available in business, in its interface with the community. Some colleagues said, yeah, we are at the forward edge of the battle area, and sometimes we are more faculty than teachers. Well, I can answer on your behalf. The latest version, updated, we're discussing with the central bank. Yes, your proposals were taken account of, including Sberbank, and added to the roadmap. We can dwell on it further in detail after lunch. The Sberbank was invited for the session, but unfortunately they have the official has not shown up. We'll have another business representative after lunch, and we'll be listening to your more details. Well, you have put it so impressively. We are dealing with a very essential issue, that is ensuring financial literacy for the disabled. Together with the central bank, we have found some blank spaces with people with mentally retarded and the graduates of corrective schools and the respective schools for the handicapped. During the first half a year after they graduate from the boarding house, for instance, they lose all the money due to the social behavior. What's being done to improve this? Yeah, we see the difference between children's homes and the long-stay boarding houses, orphanages. Other people take on this responsibility. So for children who stay at orphanages and the boarding houses, educational establishments, they have their separate programs, also manuals and textbooks. We develop those for orphanages, children's homes. We have a portfolio of all the manuals and textbooks, and we have compiled learning tasks for them. And their faculty, their teachers, they teach financial literacy to such children, of course, using a different program, unlike the one for our ordinary children, those who live in families, and to teach them how to pay for the utilities. That's one point. But for the orphanage graduates, it's even more important. They're on their own, and they have a different program for that. Well, as for effectiveness evaluation, we don't know. We have worked since 2015, fairly recently. Well, I'll add something briefly. Federally, also some training courses, materials, textbooks, manuals, and guidelines have been developed. And when we were testing some manuals for schools and orphanages and corrective institutions. Yeah, we perform testing at the entry and exit points. There were also some games used. The purpose of that is socialization, not only financial education. They are publicly available, so we can share with you about those manuals and textbooks, and we will continue within our strategy.
Just an observation. I mean, this is not what I have actually heard, but this is what I discussed with Elena Anatolievna. Central Bank, you just go, we don't need you here. No, no way, let's do it together. Yes, I thought so, but let's try to think together without compromising our teachers, so let's do it in the most effective way. And let's join our hands and do it together. Maybe there is some need for a general discussion, mutual discussion, because we discussed it in December at the Interregional Conference in Sochi. So since now we're entering an active phase of the strategy implementation, we should revisit all these issues as a matter of fact. So are you going to ask the question right away, or maybe we should postpone it till next session? We should not reinvent the wheel in any case. And let's say, speaking about the training of the volunteers, on the basis of the financial university under the government of the Russian Federation, we have a number of federal centers to improve the financial literacy for the adult population. And we can also provide training for the volunteers so that they would acquire some systems knowledge. This is a very important observation because during the presentation, I just wanted to comment on that, because a volunteer without proper training or non-certified, he or she may bring about more harm than good. So in that, it means that we should not let the uncertified people deliver the subject. That's why it's important to make a proper assessment to control and well, certification of this cadre should be organized. Of course, when we're talking about the volunteers and the viewpoint of the central bank, of course, they should have some basic training and education. Well, distinguished colleagues, we have deserved to enjoy lunch. Let's thank all our panelists and the presenters. Many thanks to the audience. We're reconvening at 3 sharp p.m. See you then.